Okay, Mr. Chairman, it's 9 o'clock. We should go ahead and get started just to make sure that we're on time here.
Okay, pull up the preamble.
All righty. Okay, can everybody hear and see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. This is a special meeting of the Cleveland City Planning Commission to hear a presentation regarding the Cleveland Lakefront Connector project. According to Article 4, meetings under Section C, special meetings of the rules of the Cleveland City Planning Commission, the planning director on behalf of the chairman may call a special meeting of the Cleveland Planning Commission within 24 hours of said meeting. Notification of a special meeting must be done in writing. An email notification was provided to all commission members on Friday, May 14th, 2021. Due to sunshine laws, the City Planning Commission must provide public notification of any meeting of the Cleveland Planning Commission outside of regularly scheduled meetings. There will be future public engagement regarding today's proposal. This is an introductory presentation for comment and feedback from the Cleveland City Planning Commission. No formal action will be taken by the commission and no public comment will be heard at this meeting. Although this is not a public hearing, we have provided access for the public to listen to the discussion. There will be official public hearings regarding this initiative in the near future. For members of the public who wish to listen to this virtual meeting, the following link has been posted to the City Planning Commission website. This meeting is being held via the Zoom platform. Michael, call the roll.
Bowen,
Present.
Downing, Fluker, Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Present.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we have a quorum at this time.
We're not taking a vote today either.
Okay.
Lillian's going to pop on in a little bit, and I think so is August. So.
Okay. So Mr. Chairman, today we're hearing a special presentation of the Lakefront Connector project. Joining us this morning is Chief of Regional Development, Mr. Ed Ripka. We are in the process of envisioning a new trajectory with respect to our waterfront. And we have a project team here who's going to lay out that vision. I'm going to turn it over right now to Chief Edward Ripka, who's going to introduce the project and the project team. Thank you.
Mr. Director, Secretary to the Commission, thank you, and to Chairman Bowen and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for making time available to allow us to engage with you today. Before we start, I'll have the members of the presentation team introduce themselves. So let me start with the Browns. Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Dave Jenkins. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Haslam Sports Group. And along with me is Ted Tai Wong, our Chief Counsel, who's been intimately involved as well.
And then your consultants that are here today, not Osborne, but you have Thomas and Jeff, Thomas Wolves and Jeff Applebaum from Thompson Hine. And then Gary, introduce yourself and Bonnie from Osborne Engineering.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Gary Rebar, CEO of Osborne Engineering, and I'm joined by Bonnie Tun, who runs our transportation and infrastructure practice.
I always mess up her last name. That's why I ask you guys to introduce her. Thank you, members of the commission. I want to get right to the Browns and Thomas to paint for you this picture and walk through this picture of just a bold vision that creates a true signature place on our lakefront. A team of consultants that were assembled by the Browns, and based on the creation of just a tremendous expanse of open space, connectivity from the city down to North Coast Harbor into the lake, and an ability to link to vision for the valley going west and out the lake shore to the east towards Cheers and the nature preserve Martin Luther King Boulevard. Just to put this into a context so that you're clear as to how we got here today. Back in fall of 2018, the mayor calls me in and he said, Ed, you're bringing me some very nice projects for development in the North Coast Harbor area. At that time, you might have recalled there was a proposal for a new hotel, exciting plan that was themed on rock and roll. But the mayor paused and he asked me to pause, and he rejected that project and the city's involvement in it. And again said, if I have a series of nice projects, I'm going to end up with a nice lakefront. And Mayor Jackson has been clear over the years that he wants a bold vision. He believes the lakefront is Cleveland's front door, and that it should be a signature place. So he asked me to convene with the lakefront stakeholders, and there were sessions that took place over several months going into 2019. And there were some conclusions, and some of the conclusions were a 14-foot wide pedestrian connector was not suitable and served the purposes of the stakeholders. And then there was also a strong sentiment that besides those railroad tracks, the differential in height from the malls down to the water, that the shoreway was a huge barrier to creating quality pedestrian, cyclist space, as well as leveraging further private development. Shortly after that, the Haslams from the Browns met with the mayor and indicated to the mayor that they wanted to step up and be a catalyst, put some skin in the game, and a considerable amount, I think you'll conclude after you hear the presentation, and try to capture this vision that the mayor has had, that Clevelanders have had forever, to link pedestrians down to the lakefront, do it in a safe way that doesn't engage people with vehicles. And they went forward and assembled a consultant team. And what you're about to see is the results of that work. It's why am I here today with you? It's because the mayor has embraced this as a vision that gets to that level of boldness that he's looking for, that signature place. And as you said, Director Collier, it really does elevate the work that was done in creating a waterfront master plan and start moving us towards a direction of a vision, a plan, and then implementation of that plan. Going into 2019, this plan actually started to surface on our part as a possible way of trying to retain Sherwin-Williams headquarters in Cleveland. We were fortunate that they did make that decision to stay in Cleveland, not at the lakefront. And then probably this meeting was probably an early 2020 process and meeting, but a little thing called the pandemic and COVID hit, and it kind of relegated this to the back burner until around late summer, early fall of 2020, when the mayor and I were discussing this plan and how to start to roll it out and see what the reaction would be to it. And the mayor directed me to meet with ODOT, and he said, we're talking about shoreway and traffic and implications of decisions with this plan. And he said, if ODOT is going to just push back strongly, then this maybe isn't where we need to go. We met with ODOT, and not only did they embrace this plan, they viewed it as an extension of the work that was done with the West Shoreway and the downgrading of a pass-through road to a local access road that allowed Clevelanders to access the lake, the water, and in this case, North Coast Harbor, and the exciting institutions that are down at North Coast Harbor. I'm going to stop at this point. Let me turn it over to the Browns and get into the actual presentation itself, and look forward to your reaction, your questions, and engagement at the conclusion of the presentation. David, I think you're next, or Ted?
Yeah, Thank you so much, Ed. Chief Ripka, really appreciate the introduction. Bonnie, if you want to go to the next slide or whoever's controlling, and Dave, obviously, please chime in. But we always like to start with this presentation with this quote when we were starting on this process a couple of years ago to create this vision, think about what the lakefront could be, what that 100-year solution could be. And we found this quote from Mayor Jackson back in 2014. And we tried to highlight the pieces that have kind of been our North Star as we work with our team to really develop the vision. Because I think connection is really the key. Not just connection kind of temporarily or on a small scale, but how do we really open up the lakefront? Because when we do that, we're going to develop the waterfront. And there's a heavy focus on public spaces and public access for all, not just the residents downtown, but Thomas, who's here, you'll hear a lot of focus on public spaces and green spaces, inclusion and access for everyone. We think if we do that, it'll open up, it won't just increase the quality of life, it'll open up, economic opportunities and really drive economic development. And I think one word we keep coming back to is density as well. How do we drive density to the lakefront, and not just density moving from my neighborhood in Ohio City to downtown, but how do we drive new residents to Cleveland and the region and new companies? So those are really a lot of the themes that you'll hear about. And I think it's important. This is obviously a large public investment that we're contemplating here for the infrastructure. So how do we make sure that it's done in a way that public-private partnership, that public investment really magnifies and unlocks a lot of private investment for the region as well. So we can hit the agenda very quickly. We'll go through the background and vision. We'll take a look at what the lakefront is today and what it could be in the future. And I think it's just important to remember this is a preliminary vision. We know how much work needs to be done, not just by the folks on this call, obviously, but by all of the stakeholders. This is a public process. We're really committed to it. We were actually really excited for the article yesterday to really get the dialogue going out in the public. We've had a lot of preliminary meetings with stakeholders, and it's been received very positively. I think in large part because everyone understands this is the very beginning of a process that we're all going to collaborate on. We'll look very quickly at some sample programming and phasing and make sure to leave time for comments and questions. So unless, Dave, you have anything to add, I'll turn it over to Thomas and the Osborne team, who can really, we don't do the vision justice like they do.
Thanks, Ted. Nothing to add. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ted. Thank you, Dave. My name is Thomas Woltz. I'm the owner and principal of Nelson Bird Woltz Landscape Architects. And Lainey McKinnon is a senior associate in our New York office, along with a whole big team, are very excited to be able to present this work to you. Just in a word of introduction, we are also working for the Cleveland Botanic Garden on a master plan and the Holden Arboretum, which have now joined forces. So we are spending a good deal of time in Cleveland. Very excited to come to know your city well and its rich history. It cannot be emphasized enough what Ted and Ed have explained about this being the beginning of a vision. And I just want to dig into that just a little bit, because as a team talking about this together, we realized this is a big idea. Others have had this big idea of connecting to the waterfront and enlarging it. But in order to test it, we need to do some due diligence, in particular around engineering, clearances, transportation. Is it even possible? And what would be the audacious moves to make it possible? So what you'll see are renderings that look like something, practically a photograph of something built. That's us imagineering to get this to be believable and reasonable. And it's based on good engineering studies to make sure that it's viable, but it is still missing the larger public process and stakeholder process that would be an extensive and ongoing part of this planning. So I just wanted to make sure and clarify that again and describe the images you're going to see. I want to also just mention that I first met the Haslams maybe 5 years ago through their support of a regional public park in Knoxville, Tennessee, that our firm, Nelson Bertwoltz Landscape Architects, is designing. And their deep commitment to the public benefit and the public landscape is extraordinary and quite sincere, and has been a major part of their philanthropy all along. So yes, this is adjacent to the stadium, but the emphasis in our conversations with them and with this project has been, what about connecting the people to this greatest natural asset of Cleveland, Lake Erie? So this image is a map from 1877, and our design process is really based on a research of ecology, like the lake and its ecosystem, or the Cuyahoga River, and culture. So maps, historic traces of what has been there before. What is the authentic story of this place is at the heart of our design process, to try to deliver something that really only belongs to Cleveland. This was a pretty inspiring image from 1877, where you can see the port, you can see the mouth of the river, and moving left in this image, but east along the lake, you're seeing this connected waterfront park with strolling paths and some topography and lookouts, some plantings, a kind of institution on a green on the far left. It's a pretty amazing early vision for the city to have this linear park along the waterfront. Next, please. So we doctored this, this image of the group plan, the Burnham Plan, where you're seeing all the civic institutions around the Great Lawn. And knowing that the rail station was never built, we thought, well, what if the thing in the 21st century that you connect to is not the rail station, it's the lake itself? And what if we could, by building a large plenum or plinth, cross the rail tracks, trigger new development parcels, and create the public access between the Great Lakes Science Center and the Brown Stadium right to the water. So you actually slide between those two cultural and entertainment institutions to access the waterfront. Next, please. This is just taking a look as how could this project be the belt buckle for this extraordinary system of the Metro Parks networks, the Cuyahoga River, the connectivity between all the parks and open spaces, and thinking about bikeways and hiking trails and greenways. There is this just big missing kind of belt buckle to the system right at the heart of the city. So its potential for connectivity is a pretty extraordinary situation. This idea of coming on the plenum and the potential for that to create new development parcels was something that we met as a team and came up to New York City to look at the Hudson Yards development, which was creating this piece of infrastructure that triggered new development parcels that helped to fund the infrastructure moves. So just looking at other models of how do you do such an audacious infrastructural project in the middle of a city. In the Hudson Yards case, it was also built over 28 rail lines. So here you see some of the obstacles, let's say, to this vision, and one by one, we've been looking at creative solutions to them. First of all, the back of the convention center is all glass looking into the railroad tracks. So you have to create some sort of kind of grand oculus, a way that light gets in and that you're looking out to something very interesting. You have the flyover of the number 2 that just sort of hits you right in the forehead if you try to go straight across. The connectivity of the convention center directly to the water. The parking garage of the Great Lakes Science Center that you're seeing in green just behind the windmill. I don't think you can see my mouse move, so I'll use words to describe it. You also have a tremendous amount of grade change, and any public space, you know, by our own ethics and by law, must meet the American Disabilities Act connectivity regulations for slopes. So there were a lot of technical hurdles, and I think the creativity of this entire team has been able to envision solutions to test for each one of them. And you can see the train station. So we have the rapid transit and Amtrak right there down on the tracks. So that's another thing. What if we could lift the station and you come up from the tracks, like in many cities, and you arrive on this platform with a view to the lake and to the heart of downtown. The next slide shows you the vision. I'll walk you through this, and thank you for the mouse assist there. I appreciate it. You're seeing the roof of the convention center, the Civic Center, and then you're seeing beyond it, and there are more images of this to come, this kind of giant oculus. We're calling it the Erie Stitch, this platform that goes over the railroad tracks and connects at an upper level to the side of the Brown Stadium and builds over the parking garage to the Great Lakes Science Center. Then it begins terracing down toward the lake and terminates with an overlook that's built above a civic space that could be used for events to look out to the water. A mixed-use development is happening around there, and I'll walk you through the different parts of this. But it's important to convey that this is the thrust of this project is really from the heart of downtown to the water, and then laterally across the waterfront, both east and west, to create the sense of a highly connected public park on the water and the sense of a campus of arts and entertainment. Here you're seeing a kind of compilation of those parts, the Erie Stitch that we're calling it, that is this oculus for light to the Civic Center, but also a kind of boomerang shaped oculus that looks down to the train tracks. I think the kid inside of any of us gets pretty excited about seeing trains in action. Bringing the shoreway along the road, making it a boulevard with bike and sidewalks and shade trees, with access to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and to the Great Lakes Science Center. So it's a little hard to see here, but you have to imagine that the plinth is coming across at an upper level and the lakefront is at a lower level, connected with ramps, stairs, and elevators. Next, please. Here we've sort of separated those two. So on the left, you're seeing the upper plinth that I was describing with this balcony to the lake, under which you'll find a gathering space, a function space right on the water, a real civic event space. The lawn and this large plaza that connects to the Brown Stadium. And the real breakthrough here was a kind of unusual concept for a stadium, which is to enter at the mezzanine level. So remember, we're coming across high. So as we touch the stadium, you have this kind of porosity into the stadium and out. But the thrust of this, again, is the park headed to the water. On the right, you're seeing some amenities just north of the Great Lakes Science Center is a proposal for a playground that might be science-based play, but a substantial amenity for young people along the waterfront. Just north of that is a possible big spray area that might be for ice skating in the wintertime and a spray pad for play in the summertime. As you move up, there's a series of gardens, strolling gardens, and a sloped overlook lawn where people could sit and watch the sunset, but it also shelters the event space in the winter weather. Moving left of that, you'll see a long, deep slot of water, and that was to create a breakwater situation with big steps going right down to the water so that people could come and touch the lake. They could be right at the waterfront. We were imagining a boating and kayak launch from that point. And then the far left corner offers the most magnificent views to the sunset. So that's a kind of gathering space. We call it a sort of a terrace, but it's a step terrace for looking out over the water. And there again, there may be a water feature. So high-level concepts, we gave them forms, and then we rendered them so that we can really communicate this vision. So I'll walk you through some of those images so that you can start to envision how that happens. But first, it's important to realize, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the due diligence of engineering that has been done by this team. Before we talk to anybody about it, we had to answer that question, can we make this work? Because there are a lot of obstacles between the group plan lawn and Lake Erie. So on the upper drawing, you're seeing a sort of dashed box, and that is then enlarged right below. But this helps you decipher decipher the connectivity that we're trying to create and some of the solutions. So on the far left of the enlargement, you're seeing the glass wall of the Civic Center looking out to this stepped kind of garden amphitheater that could have trees in it and seating looking back to the glass. And you're seeing above that the pathways that go directly from the convention center along this park toward the water. Below that plinth, you're seeing the train lines, you're seeing truck access to the port, and then to the right, you're seeing the car access that gives access to the parking garages, to the base of the stadium, and brings the grid of the city right through this development. Above that, you're seeing the sloping and terracing gardens of the park. You're seeing access, lower access into the stadium, and above that plaza that accesses the stadium. At the far right of that blow up, you're seeing the sandwich of the parking garage that services both Rock Hall of Fame and the Great Lakes Science Center. On the upper section, at the end of the parking garage, you're seeing the remaining park, and all the way at the far right, you're seeing the events center. That's a kind of balcony to the water right there. Then that earthwork that is for watching the lake, but also sheltering, creating a little microclimate there outside. I'm hoping for a lot of winter use of this waterfront. Next, please. So here is looking down on the roof of the convention center, the Erie Stitch, these two oculi. On the left of the Erie Stitch, you're seeing a hotel that would have direct access back to the Civic Center. On the right, you're seeing a building that could be mixed use, and that could host the Amtrak station coming up inside of it. So there could be an atrium, a big lobby that really welcomes our visitors to the city in a pretty spectacular way to arrive on this plinth with views out to the water and to downtown. It's a very orienting and really civic gesture of a way to arrive into the city. That building is sharing a long parking plinth with two other structures. But you'll notice, even in this concept plan, we're leaving a large space so that the court building has access to the water. That historic, really beautiful building still has its axial views to the water. So we're stitching doesn't always mean adding a building. In this case, this is an initiative completely led by Landscape to assure that these civic spaces are respected. It does not feel like a developer-driven project. In the case of Hudson Yards, we were building out every inch possible, and here it's much more about feeling the connectivity between the urban spaces and the water. You're also seeing here, to the other side of those three buildings, how the shoreway has been brought down to grade, is more of a boulevard, allowing access to Rock Hall and to Great Lakes Science Center. There are other views that will allow me to zoom in a bit more. So here you're seeing that oculus, that sort of boomerang shape looking down to the trains. And then you're seeing the green amphitheater looking down to the back of the Civic Center. You'll also notice that while the Burnham Plan and the group plan had this very taut, flat lawn, we're kind of energizing that in a different way. We felt like we didn't need another 350-foot wide strip of lawn. What we needed was exciting horticulture, beautiful trees and plantings that would be native plants to the shoreline of Cleveland and give the public a very different kind of landscape experience as you make your way to the lake. So you're seeing large sinuous curves, a combination of plaza and gardens, retreats, and overlooks as you move closer to the water. So here you're seeing the way this stitch creates the infrastructural link essential to deliver the public in a very large civic gesture to the water. This is 350 feet wide as opposed to 14. So the gesture is at the scale of the civic realm. Next, please. Here you're looking back at that plinth, and this would have, bikeway and all the connectivity at the lower level, and then you see how it slides under the plinth at the upper level. So this is really the I think the most clever part of this solution that really unlocked it for our team. And then heading across to the mezzanine level of the stadium, you can see how the access is at an upper level. You arrive into the stadium and then descend into the bowl. Next, please. This is looking at that civic space at the very end of the plinth with this balcony to the lake is just off screen. And to the left, I'll call your attention to another big civic gesture, this massive staircase and ramps bringing people down to the lower level of the plaza and overlooking the potential for ice skating there. I know part of the Erie Canal in downtown Syracuse was where that canal used to be. They have a big, very popular skating plaza there. So it's a little bit like that right in the middle of the city. It also reminds me of Rockefeller Center, where you have the balconies where people can watch people skating down below. You're seeing in the distance, a rough idea of the playground with topography and plantings and this idea of nature play next to the Great Lakes Science Center. On the right, you're seeing under this event center with light inside and a plaza outside of that for something that could host large events. Just beyond it, you're seeing a very rough concept. These buildings aren't, believe it or not, aren't really designed. They're just concepts of buildings, but it gives you a massing of volume of what we think is appropriate to allow long views to the water from inside the city while creating a viable mixed use development along the waterfront. All of the land between that development and the water is of public access. So the continuity for the public is primary here. Next. This is that slot that we were imagining cutting into the development, and the pedestrians make their way across this bridge, and you're seeing these big, almost like an amphitheater to the water, and the breakwaters create a calm where you could access the lake water for, you probably should imagine most of these people in wetsuits as opposed to bikinis and short shorts, but still giving people access to the water felt like a really good and important gesture to make in this civic realm. Next. This is the far western corner where I was mentioning this kind of sunset terrace with a water feature and cafe and amenities for the public, and then perhaps transforming the slip of water into an urban marina, again, for boating right at the heart of the city. All of these things very enjoyable to walk along in what I've really come to think of as a kind of belt buckle to the park system of the city. You're also seeing that the grid continues through the mixed use development behind the stadium and all the way back into the city. And this is the view of that sunset terrace looking out. Next, please. And this is a really important part of this that I think shouldn't be underestimated. It's a little hard to estimate because its ripple effect or ramifications could be very large. But what we've imagined is with this piece that we've really focused on could trigger a great deal of ongoing connectivity to other initiatives like the Vision for the Valley and the rest of the Metro Parks network, but also future development parcels. This unlocking the shoreway and figuring out the grade differential between the lake and the city allows us to consider a great deal of future development parcels. And the next slide just kind of roughly outlines the acreage of a few of those. So you're seeing like 16 acres, 10, 11 acres, 8 acres, 9 acres. It's amazing what that piece of highway infrastructure consumes of the sort of most precious part of your city, this piece of land adjacent to the water. So even though we're just focusing on the waterfront access from the core around this area of the sort of campus, the potential for this to have really positive effects across the waterfront are huge. So in closing of my remarks, I'll call your attention to this, the sort of current state of things. And you're looking at this massive landfill site, completely covered in concrete, pretty alienating, very inhospitable to the public. And you sort of have a screeching halt when you get to the end of the Great Lakes Science Center and you're into this pretty hostile environment. And next shows you the vision for full connectivity at full build out, where you have this park system as the gateway for the front door of Cleveland, a new front door of Cleveland that is leading with landscape and leading with public parks as the major message to welcome the public. We're going to show you a video that will fly you through this design and a lot of these initiatives. So fasten your seatbelts. It goes pretty quickly, but it gives you a sense of the connectivity that's created. So we'll fly in around the over City Square and then around the Key Tower and down the primary lawn. Here's that absolute view of the landscape to the lake, which I think is one of the most important. Left is the hotel that could connect directly to the Civic Center. Right is the train station, mixed use, Science Center. You're seeing the sort of big plaza fountain and the Civic Hall at the end and the balcony to the lake. This next view is moving from west to east. You're seeing the slot of water, kayak access, public park, civic gathering, and you can start to really feel the idea that these institutions are sitting in a campus. We had a very productive meeting with Rock Hall of Fame and looking at their future plans and what we've proposed, and I think there's a lot of harmony there and a great potential for collaboration. Here we are going to take a look at the shoreway brought down to grade. So you're seeing Rock Hall and this sort of boulevard street and how it slips under the platform. So again, that feel of a campus and its connectivity really hits home for me as a new way to welcome people into the city. And the last one is looking at this sense of campus, an elevated roof garden between this new mixed-use development, providing city views from the court building out to the water. Drop off at Rock Hall. And then this evening view, you can see the big plaza at the side of the stadium, how you could move directly into the stadium and then continue your walk along the park out to the lake's edge. And this evening rendering gives you a sense of the energy that you might feel, I think, in Cleveland's newest civic space. So thank you very much for your time and your attention. And this has been a real thrill to be part of this visioning team to think creatively about the incredible potential for this primary asset that Cleveland has. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. So is the presentation complete?
Gary, were you going to add anything further?
Just the only thing I would say, as Thomas mentioned, is we were checking for critical feasibility issues, including maintaining ingress and egress to the Port Authority, and also had a great conversation with the RTA regarding possibilities around reconfiguring the waterfront line. And really very exciting how we might be able to work with those institutions and, in the case of RTA, even enhance, their network in the area. But that would be it. I think Thomas did a great job.
Thank you, and thank you to the commission. We're open to your reactions, questions, discussion, and again, in the mayor, he's not a silver bullet guy, as you probably have come to learn about him. But one thing is that's important with a project like this is he believes it does help position Cleveland for the future. And it's an exciting vision that the consultant team has created. And I don't know about you, I could listen to Thomas all day. But anyhow, we'll stop there and open it up to your questions and discussion.
Thanks, Chief. I'm going to open up to the commission members. I guess my first question for myself is, I'd be interested in this section. It's kind of a long, drawn out section. It's very small to look at and there's no dimensions on it. So this vertical circulation that we're looking at, how many opportunities are there? How pedestrian friendly are they? And I come from the mindset, I'm on the Viaduct Bridge and our building is on Center Street, the foundation's on Center Street, but I walk out my front door on the Viaduct Bridge. And if you're a passerby and you're walking on the viaduct, there's no elegant way down to the riverfront. And so I can see some opportunities in this plan, which I appreciate, but obviously getting those details and what that means as far as the height limitations and the ramping and to get all people down to the waterfront. That's what I'm interested in knowing more about.
Yeah, I can draw your attention to the fact that all of the slopes of the plazas have been calculated to be at 5% so that you do not have rails for ADA accessibility, the American Disabilities Act accessibility. It's in the ethos to connect all people to these assets. So I hear you, Councilmember Bowen, and agree. It's very important what the civic experience is. So I'll highlight just a few that I think have been on our team's mind. One is that this hotel potential that has this connectivity back to the Civic Center and to the plaza can be serviced, drop off below grade, but the primary visitor experience is to walk out into this park right at level, and you cross the plaza and you're at access to the Amtrak station. So the convenience for visitors, guests to the city is pretty extraordinary right at this upper grade, while the infrastructural needs are being met below at the level of the shoreway. Another gesture is that major stair and ramp system that goes from the upper plinth to the lower plinth, turned toward the water basin that's shared by the Rock Hall. Yeah, so that's a big overlook terrace that would allow accessibility. The other side is ramps, this side stairs. Again, we haven't detailed it, but we have looked at the elevations. And then all of the park along the waterfront is at grade. So there would be that sense of fluid connectivity. One of the things that we've tried to do in our public parks is erase the idea of like, oh, that's the route for ADA accessibility, and this is the route for pedestrian walking able folk, so that everybody uses these same routes. But I hear you and personally agree that the experience for all people and all mobilities is essential in public space.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to make it kind of basic. I live on the near west side by Edgewater. So let's say my wife and I rode our bicycles down here and we're coming down the shoreway because now it's 35 miles an hour. How do I get on top of this and what's my experience like? Not coming through a hotel because I'm not a hotel guest.
Right. So you'd come along the shoreway, down this water access between Rock Hall. You can come right to that line with two trees. Again, we haven't fully designed this, but bring you right to the shorefront, and then you can go up onto this plinth at that big the ramps and stairs, again, that we have not detailed. But that I think would be the best processional. None of it exists right now, so it's very hard to imagine, but coming along the front of the campus, along the water, and up onto this plinth. You can also continue right around. So imagine staying on the water all the way around the development and then back on, I believe it's Third Street.
West
That is
Third,
the West Third that takes you right back into the city. So if you imagine the grid of the city pulled down, that is the shoreway, but then an unnamed road that goes north of the stadium behind through the development. And then you can also go along the waterfront. The only time, and maybe this is something I should have mentioned more carefully, the only time you are under, if you're on the shoreway as a cyclist, is the stitch. Like you're going under where you'd have the welcome lobby to the building on the left, the welcome lobby to the hotel, and then you're back out in the daylight. You're on the south side of the stadium again. So you're not in a kind of awful tunnel situation. And even that plinth has the, I think with the architectural language you would have to welcome people into these buildings would not be, a sort of under tunnel experience. So it's just that one plinth that you're underneath, you're back out in the daylight right away, which I think is important to get to that plaza to the south of the stadium.
So Tom, what's the elevation change from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs?
Because here at the Stitch, you have all the infrastructure of the plenum, which is quite thick, and then the clearance of trucks and cars going underneath. Remember in that section, you're stepping down to the level in front of the stadium, you're stepping down and down and down. So by the time we get down to that big sort of civic stair, I think you're at about 14 feet of grade change.
Okay.
12 to 14 feet. And that is, we look forward to detailing those kinds of things because those are, what's exciting here is the scale. Like it really does feel like it's to the city. And I think that's the quantum leap from the 14-foot wide pedestrian to this, basically the whole park crossing the rail.
Do you think there's an opportunity on the west side of the plinth to have a grand staircase also for vertical circulation? Or is it just on the east side?
Yeah, I think we need to have that. And also the train station atrium would have to have access from the shoreway as well as the plinth level and then down to the tracks. So you definitely will have very fluid, probably, I don't know exactly, definitely elevators and stairs to allow the station part to work. But I think another civic gesture that would be great would be from the drop-off plaza. You can just see between the buildings. We just proposed a kind of, again, it wasn't ours to mess with. So we tried to find some solutions, but not overstep too much in designing something for the Great Lakes Science Center. But we proposed a big circular drop-off because with the removal of the shoreway, there's more land. They get more land for their operations. So it's kind of a big gain for them. So I think right in that corner would be a great place for people to come out of the Great Lakes Science Center and feel that they can get right up onto this. Now they have that connectivity within their parking garage, but that's not the kind of gesture I think would be appropriate here. So you see that little, that right there. Thank you, Bonnie. That could incorporate a big wraparound stair to give another access point up and down. Or
Thomas,
from,
if you could.
at the base of the, sorry, you're getting my design juices flowing. The base of the windmill would be an amazing thing to like circumnavigate and come up onto the plinth, somehow engaging the windmill because it's such an icon of the shore.
Thomas, could you go back to that previous slide that you had up there, the aerial shot? The next one. Just looking straight down. Or Bonnie.
I guess
This one or?
The previous one. Right there.
Okay.
Previous, yeah. That one. Yeah, one of the things that, I noticed about this that I think is really good rather than have what the existing scenario creates today, which are these hard topographical changes. This pulls you through various areas of this site. So not only do you have the straight on shot going from the malls, if you look at these points, even just south of Brown Stadium, this pulls you through. If you're coming from 9th Street, you also have these green introductions that actually pull you through the site. So you're no longer dealing with like these hard sort of topographical changes, right? It's pulling you through. And this goes back to what David was discussing with respect to, if I'm a cyclist and I want to, get down here, there's ways in which you can constantly flow without creating a lot of stress for you, as a cyclist, but there are at certain points. So you'll still have some sort of hard changes, but again, these are new sort of introductory sort of promenades that pulls you through to the lakefront. And there's a flow to it, versus these, grade changes, which I think, for pedestrians and cyclists are really additive with respect to the experience. I had two particular questions that I wanted to mention with respect to this. And these are have to do with kind of the hard infrastructure. When we think about stadiums and how many arenas are being developed in a way where they're not isolated, but they're a part of a district. And I think this starts to create that district for us. You think about Oracle in San Francisco, and you think about Staples Centers, which was one of the earlier sort of renditions. You think about what this could be in connection with the stadium, and how the ingress and egress from patrons to the stadium, would experience this environment. So talk to me a little bit about sort of the hotel retail experience, because a lot of this is one about getting access to the lake, but in addition, it's even more about economic development potential.
Sure. I can answer a few of those from the design perspective, and then I'm sure Ted and Dave will have other lines of inquiry to describe. But the one of the hopes is that the stadium will not just be for the games, but that will also host a whole range of different events, so that you're creating that pulse at the waterfront, drawing thousands of people on a more regular basis than just game day.
Right.
Also, in just imagining how the stadium could be improved, this southern facade could be reimagined as a mixed retail restaurant that gives that plaza to the south a real life.
Right.
Every afternoon, like people walking from town, let's go across the Stitch, let's go down and have lunch in that plaza, and we'll walk right back to work. It's a couple of blocks from the Key Tower, for example. So it will feel, when you can get there safely, I think it will feel very, very close. Not to mention, in the mixed use development to the north of the stadium, that whole ground plane is proposed to be mixed use. Again, all of that has not been worked out, but conceptually, it's publicly accessible amenities of, dry cleaners, restaurants, cafe, all the amenities to if you're bringing the grid through, you're actually bringing the life of the city through. So energizing these places, connecting to rapid transit. And one thing I'd love if Bonnie can trace, if you do use West 3rd, just you can turn right along the South Plaza, and just to illustrate what I was saying to Councilmember Bowen, you come along the right, that's where it slips under and pops out at the Great Lakes Science Center. So that's that area where you're underneath. So it's not too extensive, but imagine that plaza to the south reimagined as a pretty vibrant destination, not just on game day, but many more times of the year. There's also something we talked about with the Rock Hall people, is all the programming opportunities, again, to break down the silos between organizations and feel like this is a district or a campus of arts and entertainment. So performances in the West Sunset Terrace, little performances, or there's just an opportunity for the programming and events to really reflect the needs of the citizens. And it's a chance to hear their voice in the upcoming public process, to try to find things that bring that heartbeat down to this new piece of the city.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, you know, Freddie, you highlighted a couple instances where stadiums, we've seen that effectively drive additional development or density. We actually live it here in our own city between the Cavs and the Indians, and what those two buildings have done for that entire East 4th region of our city. And we think that this is another great opportunity to do something similar. We've got to make sure it's safe, so that properly separating pedestrian and auto traffic makes a much greater experience. It's got to be simple. It solves some of our infrastructure challenges, whether it's parking. You know, just this stitch creates much better access to parking for people that are wanting to go to the lakefront, whether it's underneath, but also providing access to the heart of downtown and the many parking options there. So there's a lot of great operational elements of this as well.
Right. And, you know, given we're talking about, 50, year, scenario here about what this can, do, really down the road for the city. There's a lot of discussion around regional rail and regional transport. You may have heard about the concept of the Hyperloop, that would link Chicago and a number of Midwest cities. And when you think about this sort of potentially being a hub for multimodal, opportunities, I'd be remiss if I didn't look at this graphic and just look at those two gaps on either side of the land bridge here. And I ask myself when I see the trains down here, and I look at West 3rd, and then I look all the way over to West 9th and start to ask, that question, what are the prospects of filling that whole sort of gap there with park and other, activities to really, kind of bring the Civic Center into that sort of waterfront district with sort of the Browns Stadium as sort of that centerpiece.
I would say the developers could speak better to it, or the landscape architects, but I think we've seen real examples of, not just in this plan, but other cities, of spanning tracks, spanning infrastructure to create public spaces and additional developable acreage. So
Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, Texas is one that comes to mind, where the interstate was capped and it had been a long-term divide. I think to your question, there is an attempt to balance, like, this is a heroic, this 350-foot wide plinth is a pretty heroic gesture. And we have talked about capping the entire thing and what that would cost versus within the Cleveland economy, what you might expect to be able to fill with enough buildings to help pay for the cost of that plenum. In New York City, they had 4,000 foot skyscrapers surrounding Hudson Yards that could pay for the plinth and the plaza over the 28 rail lines. Just was not sure if that's feasible here. And by creating, if you think about the grid, you have the road to the east going across, the Shoreway coming across, the road around the north of the stadium coming across, and then the two access points from the Civic Center straight to the park, and then West 3rd. So you have basically a fluid, well, as you said, actually, when you were first talking about, there's a kind of fluidity that the city just continues to make its way all the way to the waterfront. In this concept, that's kind of where we stopped, as opposed to capping the entire rail corridor. But you're right, that would be a giant opportunity. And I would say that nothing we're proposing here would preclude, if this is a huge success and people are flocking to this area and real estate values rise and could justify that additional infrastructure move, there's nothing that we're proposing that would preclude that working. as far as I can think. So believe it or not, we were trying to be reasonable in how much infrastructure we proposed that this project would
Absorb.
build. Yes, there could be more. You're absolutely right.
Other commission members?
Yeah, I thank you first and foremost, everyone. This is exciting to look at. It's it's rightly been described as bold. I guess my interest is, instead of on my end getting into kind of specifics on the plan, this is a plan, this is a concept, and what will be implemented in the future will not necessarily be this exactly relative to those small items, like where's this, where's that. I guess my question is more about process, and maybe it's a question to Chief Ribka or Director Collier. I'm not sure the average Clevelander really knows how much the city's done and had to overcome just to get the level of development we've seen along the lakefront. Due to state law and the fact that this is fill and there's a lot of obstacles. So I guess I'm interested in kind of a broad idea of what the process is. Is the intention for this to go to Planning Commission? It had been mentioned that ODOT was interested. I guess how do we take this idea and start to try to put it into a chronology, and what would that look like? Kind of what's our plan after this meeting's over?
Councilman, thank you for the question. I think that process going forward is still a fluid process. I could foresee, for example, I'm kind of dating myself, but I was on the Planning Commission back when Progressive Field and the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse project, the Gateway project, was first coming along, and the commission was very intimately engaged with the planning and the evolution of that process. So there's various tracks that I think I'm foreseeing. One being the formal review bodies of the city of Cleveland, but then with a key role of the Planning Commission, engaging the larger publics in that process as well. It leads to the decision to apply for a $5.6 million grant from ODOT through the track process. The next phase of study, preliminary engineering, the necessary traffic studies, traffic modeling, public engagement, it's estimated that that's about an $8.1 million price tag. Our local match as a city would be $2.5 million, and that comes out of the $10 million that has already been previously allocated and appropriated for the pedestrian connector concept. So I think there's various tracks that would involve the general public, continue to further analyze this concept and vision to make sure it works. And then even to start to look at how do you structure a capital stack that can help finance the public improvements, which again, the mayor is clear. He likes public improvement investment and infrastructure investment that leverages private investment. And we think that there's, through a TIF mechanism, a considerable amount of dollars that could be leveraged from private investment to help finance this. So I'm viewing this as multiple tracks that will get further refined over the summer months. And to be very clear to you as a councilman and respectful to you, I was there, the application and acceptance of a track grant, it requires council authorization, and we'll bring that back to this Planning Commission, as well as the appropriation for the $2.5 million match.
And Councilman, if I may, because I think this is important, and I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're alluding to this, is sort of the public conversation, which is something that I know that's important. I do want to indicate that we have to keep in mind that this is not the start of the dialogue about the importance of our water and riverfronts. What you're seeing here is the maturation and refinement of the desire to connect our communities south of the shoreway to the waterfront, downtown being one of those neighborhoods, just like Collinwood and others, and Detroit Shoreway. So what you're seeing is the actual ideation, maturity, the detailing of that long standing desire to connect. And there has been a lot of public engagement around the waterfront district plan, if you recall. And here we are decades later, hammering down and refining that, moving toward implementing, and even beyond myself, there's going to be, and others on this phone, there's going to be other initiatives that's going to continue to build on that vision and that desire that this community has already stated it's wanted for many years. So I just want to emphasize that, because I think sometimes when we think about projects that take many, many years, we forget the trajectory. And it's important when you talk about chronological, we tell that story about from whence we came. And that waterfront district plan led to the West Shoreway investment. It leads to projects like Battery Park. It leads to the Metro Parks investment. It leads to this discussion that we're having today. It's going to lead to the Eastern sort of waterfront development scenario. So just keep in mind that this is a trajectory and we're all a part of that continuum, and that won't stop. So I just want to throw that out there with respect to how we continue to have ongoing dialogue about this and continue to massage the proposals here that you're seeing.
I appreciate that, Director, and thank you, Director in Chief. Getting these, applying for grant funding to do a lot of that due diligence is a logical next step. And to your point, Freddie, how do we? I think that when I speak with residents, they're eager to move towards that implementation, and that's I'm eager to see that that there's a subsequent step after this, because this is not to diminish the hard work that's gone into everything up to date, but this is relatively easy compared to the heavy ask of securing funding, and building in a very beautiful but complex and unique development site, a former landfill. So.
Okay, I guess one of my other questions is FAA. The structures that you show on your conceptual plan, do they meet within the guidelines of the FAA flight paths, or are they objects that are going to need some kind of variance?
David, all of the buildings were placed within the clear zone clearances, so which is really the height of the stadium, but that definitely needs to be considered throughout, of course.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Good answer. Anyone else?
Just one last comment with respect to the people-centric nature of this. There's a couple of things that I want to highlight that are very relevant with respect to the issue of access and equity, which I think has been the Achilles heel of the Cleveland waterfront for many, many years. People who not only don't have the physical access to actually experience the waterfront due to topography and the shoreway, but also those who come to our waterfront and don't feel like the activities are welcoming for them. And I think the infusion of green space and the level in which it's been done, and the ability of all to be able to not just experience a sports venue that's captures everyone in our region, but also being able to touch the water, see the water, experience the water. I think all of that has been, thought of with respect to trying to pull, the public into our waterfront. And, the malls has been sort of that living room of our entire city, and I would like to say that downtown is one of the only neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland, when you think about it, where you have the corporate CEO, walking in the same space as the guy who runs the sandwich shop on the corner. So think about that, and I think that if we continue to look at, downtown and the transactions that we do in downtown as integrated and creating, these public opportunities for, people to have access no matter their race, no matter their income level, and have a feeling of a sense of belonging, you can do that, by giving them access from a pedestrian standpoint, a cyclist standpoint, and even the type of the facilities and programming that can happen down there. So it's a package, it's not just the building of a bridge. And I think that this is what this concept, begins to embrace.
Just to pick up on that, it's a great, probably concluding wrap up, Director. But just to take it even a step further, if we put a lot of emphasis on private development and community benefits, and the participation and the construction and build out of private projects in the city. This is a great opportunity, though, for some job creation to take place. And most importantly, in terms of our goal in this administration, and that is wealth creation opportunities. Again, it's a significant public investment in infrastructure, but that should leverage a significant private investment and an opportunity for all to be participants in the future retail and even in terms of housing, everything from obviously market rate, but also down to workforce and a more affordable house product as well. But you're right. The common opportunity for all is is that 350-foot wide land bridge, as the mayor calls it, not a narrow 14-foot commuter path as Gary so frequently and I think correctly calls it. So your comment is a great wrap up, I think, to this discussion today.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Director. And all the presenters, we appreciate all your time today. I look forward to the next time we meet, and hopefully that will be soon. Freddie, I think what we need to do is set out a schedule so we see this frequently and get to the end game, which is actually building it sooner than later. So why don't we talk about that later today and putting together a schedule, and hopefully Jeff can accommodate his time and get that done. All right, Fred?
Thank you all so much for your time and for your leadership in the city. It's really a pleasure to get to brainstorm on this pretty audacious idea and to sense so much support across the city. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chairman, Director, and members of the commission, thank you for your time and engagement, and looking forward to further engagement.
Thank you.